Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. Now, as Moscow tightens security ahead of its May 9th Victory Day parade, warnings of potential Ukrainian strikes and scaled-back military displays underscore how the war is increasingly shaping even Russia's most symbolic national event. On the battlefield, ceasefire proposals once again collapsed amid continued Russian drone and air attacks across multiple Ukrainian regions. At the same time, Kiev is accelerating defense planning with Sweden on a potentially multi-billion-euro Gripen fighter jet deal. And now to discuss the latest, we're joined by Stephen Moore, founder of the Ukraine Freedom Project. Good to have you here in the studio with us. Welcome.
Sascha, always great.
So let's start with the latest. We've had these ceasefires unilaterally declared. One was proposed by Kiev, it was rejected, back and forth. Give us your latest now, because we have these strikes just overnight across various cities in Russia, oil depots very close to Moscow, well, in Moscow, in fact, actually, as well. So what do you make of where we are with the ceasefire and the latest strikes right now?
Sascha, it's just a beautiful thing. I never thought that I would really enjoy the sight of billowing black smoke coming up out of the off of a city as much as it has recently in these strikes of the Ukrainians against Russia. And you know, in Ukraine, Russia has sent 56,000 Shahed drones over the last several years into Ukraine to kill civilians. So now Zelensky is taking the war back to Putin. So Putin is no longer someone the Russian people can trust to keep them safe, because there's 6, 8, 10 Russian cities on fire right now. So and I just got back from Washington, D.C., and let me tell you what I learned there, is that Donald Trump is a mercurial figure, to say the least, and all of Europe is trying to figure him out. The latest thing that was not reported well by the media is that Trump was on a conservative radio show in the United States, and he said to the host, I've always liked Zelensky. Zelensky and I have gotten along well, except for that one time in the White House where I thought he was a little aggressive. And Trump went on to say that you got to admire the Ukrainians. They can fight. They know how to fight. They're tough. And he said this like the day after Putin called him and said, President Trump, hey, can you hook me up with a ceasefire for my Victory Day parade in Moscow on May 9th? Mm-hmm. And that's not a power move. That is a sign of weakness. Hey, I need some help. I got a parade. They're gonna bomb my parade. Can you help me? And so what is happening now is Putin is showing himself to be a loser. Trump doesn't like losers. He ejects them from his orbit. He likes people who win. He said it many, many times. Ukrainians are winning, and it's obvious. Mm-hmm. So that's the way this dynamic tracks out in America.
Okay. And also, he said, in terms of a power move, I mean, Putin would like this to show himself as a power move. This parade is big in terms of Russian history, but particularly for him. Now, if we're looking at the attendance, what we know so far, we know that, for instance, in the EU, we have one leader going, Robert Fico, but not to the parade. So this has also come under criticism. But
just going there to shop, is he?
Well, we'll have to see, meeting with Putin. But what do you make of who we know is there? What does that tell us in terms of symbolism?
Well, and who do we know is there? I looked at that list. There's like 8 or 9 leaders from somewhere. No one I've ever heard of. That is not a marquee bunch of people. Every leader on there, with the possible exception of Fico, is someone that Americans have never heard of. I'm well-traveled. I couldn't point to most of those places on a map that these leaders are coming from. So every decent leader, even all the bad guys, are boycotting his military parade. No one's showing up. He's throwing a party. No one's coming, except for the Ukrainians. So this is the sort of thing that I think in the international community makes people realize that Putin is on his way down. He is again, he can't protect Venezuela. He couldn't protect Syria. He's apparently got an apartment complex for deposed bad guys around the world, right? With Syria, Venezuela, Iran. He has sent 18 cargo planes full of weapons to Iran for Iran to use to kill U.S. servicemen. but he has not gone in a big way that you would expect. Vladimir Putin, the premier of Russia, the president of the Russian Federation, he should go protect his friends, and he's not. He can't even protect his military parade.
Mm-hmm. And also, that I think is going to be very, very important for him. I mean, it's such an image that he's curated for himself that the Russian people can see. Let's say that, barring whatever, we don't know what will happen, but in any case, a scaled-down parade, symbolically, with less leaders there. Will this still be considered a loss for Putin? How will this domestically, you think, be interpreted by Russians?
It is difficult. Listen, I worked in Russia in 1996. I was part of a team of American political consultants that secretly advised Boris Yeltsin's campaign. So my knowledge of Russian campaign politics is a little dated, but it's difficult for me to understand how a smaller parade with fewer, people in attendance, and it's certainly, no one's like, oh wow, Xi Jinping's showing up, and while this is happening, there's 6 or 8 Russian cities on fire. It's difficult for me to imagine how you can pull anything good out of that if you're Vladimir Putin. Mm-hmm. And then if the Ukrainians come visit and start, sending drones and the tanks on the parade, man, that is just a bad look for a guy who, he depends on fear. The reason that he is the most powerful man in Russia is because people fear him. Mm-hmm. Right now, he's not looking like much of a guy to be feared.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we've said that before. We'll have to see if this is another one of those things that will, impact public opinion of him there. But let's talk also what you mentioned before, President Trump, as someone who respects power. You mentioned that he was on a local conservative channel. I think you just mentioned that a few moments ago. Where are we right now? If he does see Ukraine winning, if indeed it's correct, as you said, that he does actually respect Zelensky, where are we in terms of the future of talks? Is he going to listen more now to Zelensky? Is that too early to say?
Well, if you don't like what Trump's saying, just stick around for a little while and see what he says next. And Trump is someone who has been well known to be impacted by external forces. Like there's a belief in America that if you want him to understand your issue better, just run a TV commercial on Fox News. And we actually ran a commercial called "Putin is a Loser," and you can see it at PutinIsALoser.com, and to try to influence Trump. But it's still early. But man, these are some of the best signs that we have seen in a long time. And again, Trump is pretty straightforward, and he likes winners. He doesn't like losers. And right now, that dynamic between, again, you look at Ukraine. Ukraine was a country, and still is, a country that's asking for help from its neighbors to defend against Russia. And, the reason that Poland, if the Russians had swept through Ukraine in the first 3 weeks of the war, like everyone thought they would, you guys in Poland would be having a much tougher time of things. But the Ukrainians are holding the line against the Russians, against Europe. And so they still need help, but they're not a beggar nation because they have developed these methods of warfare that our adversaries have developed very well as well. Also, like, the people leading the world in drone warfare, the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, and the Ukrainians. And now the Ukrainians are exporting that technology to the Gulf to help defend not only American troops, but the Saudis, the UAE, Oman, all these oil-rich countries. And so that's a really different look now for the Ukrainians that's happening.
Mm-hmm. Also, speaking of a different look, I mean, we've seen also progression, as you said, the Ukrainians have held their own, not just by sheer force of will, but also through know-how, through specific hardware, building their own military up, getting also things from allies. Let's talk about the latest with these Gripen fighters. Just want to get your sense of it. What kind of dynamic that changed? I mean, they're making their own, they have weapons, but what is the Sweden equation in all this now with these fighters?
Yeah, listen, I love to see the F-16s fly overhead, and we see that a lot. And if we can add the Swedish fighters to the mix, that'll just be even better because, the main problem that the Ukrainians have, their Achilles heel, is the constant missile and drone strikes against civilians. If they are unable to defend themselves against these strikes, then it gets really, really hard to fight elsewhere, because if all your civilians are dying in a massive way, then that's a problem. Fortunately, the Ukrainians take out 90% of the drones and missiles that the Russians send their way. And they do that through not only their own anti-drone drones, through their own missiles, they do that with fighter planes, and these Gripens will certainly help. The interesting dynamic is the Patriot missile, the ones from the US, which is probably the best anti-aircraft missile in the world. The problem is, and they're finding this out in Iran, is that Shahed drones are $35,000 each to make, and the Iranians before the latest invasion were making them at the rate of $10,000 a month. Now, the Patriot, which is a great piece of machinery, is $4 million each. And right now, U.S. Army doctrine is to use 2 Patriots to take down any threat and to make sure that the threat is gone. So that's $8 million to take out a $35,000 drone. You can only make 600 Patriots a year right now. So the technology, the methodology, the tactics, the techniques that the Ukrainians are developing are key to not only their safety, but to your safety and to our safety. So it's just a completely different dynamic with the Ukrainians right now.
Yeah, as you said, that's in terms of, especially in drone warfare, many other aspects, especially drones, Ukraine is leading that in terms of innovation. Look, we'll have to close it there. Stephen Moore, the founder of Ukraine Freedom Project, thanks so much for coming by.
Always great, man. Let's do it again.
My pleasure. I thank you for watching, but stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.